Hey, Dr. Carole Holland here. Welcome to another episode of Covered in It. Today, it's going to be me. I just had some great things on my mind, and I wanted to share a lot of things, to young veterinarians, to other people that are in the horse business, because, this is an all-life consuming business. And being that it's my 40th year, I've had a lot of reflection. And reflection on what I would have done if I wasn't me. What if I was another person other than myself? But I really couldn't have been anybody other than myself. But I look back and I want to give advice because I think I'm entitled to give advice now. So one of the best things that I can think back of that I think I had back in my younger days, but I'm not sure. But to young people, our cultures have changed so much than when I started. Because when I started, it was the culture in veterinary medicine of work hard and nobody cares. And I think that was the American way. And now we have to all think about ourselves. We've evolved. It's not that the old people want to make the young people work hard, but we have evolved. But also, you have to remember, when you come into a job or you're going into a job, why? Why did you pick veterinary medicine? Why did you pick this? Is it because you love animals? Is it because you want to build a business? Your why or your purpose in life is what drives us. I think it's more of a purpose, to find the purpose in what you're good at. And if you're good at business, then own veterinary clinics because you're still doing that. If you're good at taking care of animals, then work for somebody. But if that's your purpose in life, that's what I would go back and look at and decide that. And then, make sure you write it down and look at it 40 years later or 20 years later, because we can always redefine our purpose in life as we move along. So that's tip number one. Number two, have one of the absolute best things you can have that I've learned, and doing a lot of reading outside of veterinary medicine, which is not so common, is your attitude about every single day matters. And how does your attitude get better? It's because you can have gratitude. You have gratitude for having animals. You have gratitude for having clients. You have gratitude for going into your office and that you're healthy enough to do that in the daytime, or whatever you can pick up, even if it's only one thing. Because having that gratitude, having that ability to find the small things in your life, because veterinary medicine, it's your life. It's not just a career. It's not just what you do. You don't walk in and walk out. It is your career. It's who defines you. And I believe if you feel that, whether it's the business side, whether it's promotion of life, whether it's just working for a drug company, if that's your purpose, you're doing all the things that you went to school and spent all that time to do. So when you have gratitude and when you find that purpose in your life, start doing that every day. I think in the past 40 years, I've had ups and downs and hills and valleys. And lately, learning about having the gratitude to be able to play with your animals when you're talking and do all this fun stuff, or clients' animals if you don't have any or anything like that. I mean, that's why I went into this business. And there's going to be days in your life, there's going to be days where the challenges are harder, where the days are super hard because some animal just doesn't want to live, or the clients have a hard time and they come in with all of their problems. Or even then, if you're running a business, what if your HR department falls? What if you are the HR department? What if you did not want to be the HR department of your clinic? But it's forced on you, and then you go, wait a minute, I have gratitude because I chose to be a business owner. I chose to do this every day. So I'm going to be the best HR person I can be. And that might not be the best that day, but it might be another day. I think it's point number 3 anyway. I kind of get lost when I start talking about all these things because it's so meaningful to me and so important to me. The other thing that I have learned that I want to tell everybody that's really forefront on the mind of the generation, the younger generation as we call it. I was the younger generation when I started, so the younger generation now is a lot different than when I started as my younger generation. Take care of yourself, but taking care of yourself doesn't mean that you don't work hard. It doesn't mean that I'm going to take a sick day because then you create problems for the rest of your work. Taking care of yourself might mean 15 minutes a day of meditation. It might mean watching a movie for 15 minutes a day. It might mean On that day that you did not get off because you were called in, the next day you take an extra 30 minutes. You get up at 4:30 or you stay late till 10 o'clock and you do things like that, and you find little bits of things that you can do every day. You try not to say, I did not get my day off. I had to work extra because my business called me in or the animal was sick. But then you find the time another day. And that also goes back to the point of having a great attitude, you know, because that's really the whole purpose of life, is to get through it through the smoothest possible way that you can. So when you take that personal time for yourself, which means, you know, it may not come when you want it, but it usually, you know, try to make it come, you sharpen your saw. And I read this a few years ago, right? Sharpening the saw, and it really hit home with me. And it's such a cliche saying, but you can't sew up an animal if you're falling asleep. You can't do acupuncture if you can't remember the points because you're so tired. You know, you cannot save that animal and do critical thinking if you haven't eaten properly. And all of those things are sharpening your saw. And that makes you the better veterinarian that you are. It doesn't mean that you have to do it every single day. It means that it's accumulation. And so that's kind of redefining the purpose of, I only work 10 to 3 Monday to Friday. But if that is your purpose, then you're defining your life in a certain way. It all depends on what you've chosen. And one of my favorite things to say is, if you're going to jump off of a diving board, aren't you going to look in the pool first to see if there's water? If you're going to become a horse veterinarian, aren't you going to know that being a horse veterinarian means you don't have hours, means your hours could change at any time? It means that a horse could get sick in that 15-minute appointment, or the horse next to the horse you're checking is going to get sick. Are you going to tell that client you can't help their other horse when it would take another veterinarian 2 hours to get there? So that screwed up your whole day. And honestly, to be like slang about it, it really did screw up your whole day. But that is part of being a horse vet. So look at those things before you dive off the diving board. If you want a 10 to 2 job, or you want a 9 to 5 job, that's okay too. That's exactly what you picked. But when you close the doors at 5 o'clock and you're allowed to walk out at 5 o'clock, that's the kind of life you chose. And so you have to know what comes with that and what kind of practice that is. It's just where you want to go and knowing clearly where you want to be. You can try a certain type of job. Everybody does. If you don't like it, we don't have slavery in America, thank goodness, at least now. When I started out as a young vet, I think we did. But I'm just kidding to if any of my bosses are still alive. I don't think so. But in any case, just think about, you know, I'm taking this job because of my purpose, because of what I've chosen. You may decide through continuing education, which I recommend, it's number 5, that you stay on top of continuing education. Vet school is only what the curriculum states. It only tells you A, B, C, this animal, this disease, that disease. When you get out, we are so lucky now. We have advanced imaging. We have techniques that we are allowed to do on the animals, you know, alternative medicine, integrative medicine. Every weekend in America there's continuing education. And just because the state requires it for your license, just because your boss tells you you have to, it's really something that will enhance your first 4 years of school or your first 6 years if you went to an internship or residency. Always make sure you get together, stay with your friends, socialize at those meetings, because the community of your veterinarians and doing this continuing education can really, really, really go a long way, because it always helps that we have support. Maybe I sounded like I'm standing on a soapbox today. Maybe I sounded like I'm a bleeding heart about my life. But you know, I kind of am. Right now, I have the ability. I kind of can get up here and say things because, you know, I'm a little old. And on top of it, you know, I do have that life experience. I can go back and say, you know, I didn't like that job I had, or I really liked that job I had. But I gave my all in every one of the jobs, and that part I have no regrets on. So when you find your purpose, maybe I could have been a better whatever. Maybe I could have chosen this pathway a little differently. But we all say that, and you should never have any regrets if you can define your purpose and look at it, and just have gratitude. Have a great day.